I swung the hammer one last time, securing the last shingle on Yaretzi's storm-damaged roof. When the wood beneath me groaned and gave way, I tumbled into the attic below, landing in a cloud of dust and old cardboard boxes that scattered like forgotten memories. Coughing and brushing myself off, I reached for the nearest box to steady myself, and that's when I saw it. A faded photograph of two young women laughing together, their arms around each other in a way that looked more than friendly, and one of them was unmistakably my mother 20 years younger. The image hit me like a second fall. Mom, with her usual stern ponytail and modest dress from church photos, looked radiant here, her head tilted toward the other woman with an openness I had never seen. I flipped the photo over. In careful cursive it read, Y&R, Summer 1978, Forever Yours. My hands shook. Yaretzi, the elderly woman whose leaking roof I had volunteered to patch after the big storm last month. The quiet neighbor who brought casseroles to our family when Dad passed and who sat alone in the back pew at Sunday service. I stuffed the photo back into the box, but my eyes caught more. Bundles of yellowed letters tied with ribbon, a small wooden cross worn smooth from years of holding, and a dried corsage pressed between tissue paper. Footsteps creaked on the attic stairs. Quinn, you okay down there, honey? Yaretzi's voice was soft, concerned, the same gentle tone she used when she waved at me from her porch each morning. She appeared in the dim light, her silver hair pulled into a neat bun, her cardigan buttoned high despite the summer heat. At 72 she moved slowly but with a quiet dignity that always made me feel safe around her. I tried to smile but the words stuck. Yeah, I'm fine. Just found some old stuff. Sorry about the mess. She knelt beside me, her knees popping, and her eyes landed on the open box. For a moment her face softened into something I couldn't name. Sadness, maybe, or recognition. Those are mine, she said simply. Been meaning to sort through them for years. The storm must have shaken everything loose. She didn't reach for the photo right away. Instead she sat on an old trunk and looked at me with those clear blue eyes that had seen decades I couldn't imagine. You're a good girl for helping an old woman like me. Your mother raised you right. The mention of Mom twisted something in my chest. I had always known Mom as the rock of our family, the one who led Bible study, who quoted scripture when I came home late from college, who insisted that marriage and faith were the only paths worth walking. She had never spoken of any life before Dad. Now this box felt like a crack in the foundation. I pulled out one letter, the ink faded but legible. My dearest Rebecca, it began. Rebecca, Mom's name. I stopped reading aloud but Yaretzi didn't stop me. She simply nodded once, as if she had been waiting for this moment longer than I had been alive. We sat there in the dusty attic for nearly an hour. She told me how they met at a church youth camp in the summer of 1978, how Rebecca's laugh had lit up the whole bonfire circle, how they had stayed up talking about dreams of college and travel until the counselors made them go to bed. We were best friends, Yaretzi said at first, her voice careful. But when I held up the photo again, she sighed and let the truth slip out like air from a long-sealed jar. More than that, Quinn. We loved each other in the way the world back then didn't allow. Your grandparents found out. The pastor got involved. They said it was a sin that would destroy our souls and our families. They sent Rebecca to live with an aunt in another state for a year. By the time she came back, I was already engaged to a boy from the next town. A marriage that lasted 6 months before we both admitted it was wrong. Your mother married your father 6 months after that. We never spoke again until I moved next door 10 years ago. She pretends she doesn't remember. The words landed heavy in the warm attic air. I stared at the cross in the box, the same shape as the one Mom wore every Sunday. Religion had always been our family's compass. No drinking, no dancing, no questions. Now it felt like the compass had been pointing at a wall the whole time. I helped Yaretzi carry the box downstairs to her living room, where the afternoon light slanted through lace curtains and made the old photographs glow. She didn't cry, but her hands trembled as she retied the ribbon. I don't expect you to understand, honey, but I'm glad you know. Secrets have a way of rotting from the inside. That night I lay in my childhood bed across the street, the same room where Mom had tucked me in with prayers about purity and obedience. The photo burned behind my eyelids. I kept seeing Mom's young face, open and happy, next to Yaretzi's. What had it cost them to bury that? What was it costing me to wonder? I didn't sleep much. By morning I knew I had to go back. Helping fix a roof had become something far bigger, and I had no idea how deep the cracks would go. The next afternoon I returned with fresh shingles and a thermos of coffee, but mostly I returned because the questions wouldn't leave me alone. Yaretzi opened the door in her usual cardigan, but her eyes held a new softness, like she had decided I was worth trusting with the rest of the story. We worked side by side on the porch steps first, replacing rotten boards while the cicadas hummed in the trees. After an hour she wiped her forehead and said, "You're quiet today, Quinn. That box is still bothering you, isn't it?" I nodded, hammer paused mid-swing. "It's just Mom never said a word. She acts like the only love that matters is the kind that fits inside a white dress and a church aisle. I keep thinking about all the times she told me to pray away my doubts, like feelings were something you could just decide not to have." Yaretzi set down her sanding block and looked across the street toward my house, where Mom was probably inside ironing altar cloths for Sunday. "Your mother wasn't always like that. She used to dream about seeing the ocean, about teaching little kids, about a life that wasn't scripted by her parents' rules. The church told her those dreams were dangerous if they included me. They told her God would only love her if she chose the straight and narrow. So she did. And she's spent 35 years trying to believe it was the right choice." I felt the weight of that in my own chest. I had my own secrets. The way my heart raced when Riley from the community center smiled at me during volunteer shifts. The way I sometimes lingered in the library stacks reading books about women who loved women, and then felt guilty for even looking. I had never told anyone. Mom's voice in my head was too loud. "The Bible is clear, Quinn. Love is between a man and a woman." But here was Yaretzi, living proof that love didn't always follow the script, and that forcing it to had broken more than one heart. We moved inside for lemonade, and Yaretzi pulled out more letters. She read one aloud in a voice that cracked only once. "Rebecca, if they make us choose between each other and God, I choose you. But I know you can't. I'll pray every night that you find peace." Mom had written back, pages and pages of scripture mixed with tears on the paper. "I love you, but I love Jesus more. Please forgive me." Yaretzi closed the letter gently. She was 20. I was 21. Neither of us was wrong for wanting to be good. Neither of us was right for hurting each other to stay that way. That sentence stayed with me all week. I helped Yaretzi every afternoon after work at the hardware store, and each day the conversation deepened. She never pushed, never tried to turn me against Mom. She just shared the truth the way you share a scar. Something that hurt once but proved you survived. By Friday I couldn't avoid my own house anymore. Mom was making meatloaf when I walked in, the radio playing hymns. She smiled the same tired smile she always did. "How's the old lady's roof coming?" she asked. I almost told her right then. Almost laid the photo on the counter, and asked why she had never mentioned the girl who once made her laugh like that. But I saw the cross around her neck, and the way her shoulders carried the weight of the whole congregation. And the words died in my throat. Instead I said, "Fine. She's tougher than she looks." Mom nodded, satisfied, and I felt the first real crack open inside me. That weekend Riley stopped by the house project to help. She was 26, short dark hair, always wearing band t-shirts under her work overalls, the kind of person who laughed easily and asked questions that made you think. We had met at the community center's disaster relief sign-up. She handed me a cold soda and said, "You look like you're carrying the whole town on your back, Quinn. Want to talk about it?" I almost did. Instead I changed the subject and watched her hammer nails with steady hands. For the first time the attic didn't feel quite so dusty. But the questions kept growing, and I knew the storm inside me was only beginning. Monday morning I found Mom in the kitchen sorting canned goods for the church pantry. The sunlight caught the silver in her hair, and for a second she looked like the girl in Yaretzi's photo. I couldn't hold it anymore. "Mom, I found something at Yaretzi's house. Old pictures. Of you." Her hands froze on a can of green beans. Slowly she turned, and I saw the exact moment recognition hit her. A flicker of fear, then the iron wall of faith sliding down. "That was a long time ago," she said quietly. "Before I knew better." We sat at the table, and I laid the photo between us like evidence in a trial. Mom touched the edge with one finger, but didn't pick it up. Yaretzi was my friend. The church helped us see that what we felt wasn't God's plan. They saved us from a lifetime of sin and loneliness. I thank God every day for that mercy. Her voice was steady, the same tone she used in Bible study when someone questioned why bad things happen to good people. I wanted to believe her. Part of me did. But another part heard Yaretzi's quiet pain when she talked about the years she spent alone after the breakup. The way she never remarried because no one else ever felt right. What if the church was wrong? I asked. The words tasted dangerous. Mom's eyes hardened. The Bible doesn't change, Quinn. Love is defined by God, not by feelings. If I had followed my feelings back then, I wouldn't have you. I wouldn't have the life the Lord blessed me with. The argument stretched through lunch and into the afternoon. Mom quoted verses I had heard since I was little. I countered with the hurt in Yaretzi's eyes, with the way Mom's own smile in that photo looked freer than any smile I had seen on her since. Neither of us raised our voices, but the air grew thick. You don't understand what it cost me to choose the right path, she finally said, tears gathering but not falling. And I won't let you throw away everything we've built because some old woman decided to open boxes that should have stayed closed. She stood and walked out to the garden, leaving the photo on the table like a wound. I drove straight to Yaretzi's. She was watering her roses. The same roses Mom used to admire from our porch without ever crossing the street. I told her everything. Yaretzi listened without interrupting, then set down the watering can. Your mother isn't a villain, Quinn. She's a woman who was told her love was broken, and spent her life trying to fix herself to match what everyone said God wanted. I don't blame her for that. I blame the fear that made her believe she had to. We sat on the porch swing, and for the first time I admitted out loud what had been growing inside me for years. I think I might be like you. Like both of you were. I feel things for women. And it scares me how right it feels. Yaretzi reached over and squeezed my hand once, a grandmotherly gesture that somehow meant everything. Then you're braver than we were, because you're asking the questions instead of burying them. That evening Riley texted asking if I wanted to grab coffee after the next volunteer shift. I said yes before I could overthink it. When I met her at the cafe, her smile made the weight in my chest feel a little lighter. We talked about everything except the secret. But when our hands brushed reaching for the same napkin, something inside me clicked into place. I didn't pull away. For the first time the choice didn't feel like sin. It felt like breathing. The days blurred into a rhythm of hammers and heartbeats. I spent mornings at the hardware store, afternoons at Yaretzi's fixing trim and painting shutters, and evenings stealing moments with Riley. She never pushed, never asked for more than I could give. But every shared laugh and quiet look built something solid between us. One night after we finished caulking windows, we sat on Yaretzi's porch steps watching fireflies. Riley turned to me and said, "You've been different since you started this project. Lighter but also heavier. If you ever want to talk about what's really going on, I'm here. No judgment." I took a deep breath and told her everything. The photo, Mom's reaction. The way my whole understanding of love and God had tilted sideways. She listened, then reached for my hand in the dark. That's a lot to carry alone. You don't have to. Her fingers were warm and steady. And when she leaned in and kissed my cheek, soft as a promise, I didn't flinch. It felt like coming home to a house I had never known I owned. Yaretzi watched from the doorway with a small smile, but said nothing until Riley left. "She's good for you," she murmured. "Reminds me of your mother at that age. Kind eyes, strong hands, the kind of heart that doesn't break easily." I asked her how she had survived the years after the separation. She looked at the stars and answered, "I stopped asking God to change me and started asking Him to help me live with who I was. Some Sundays I still sit in the back pew because the hymns feel like old friends. Other Sundays I walk in the woods instead. The Lord and I came to an understanding. He made me this way, and I'm not going to spend my life apologizing for it." Her words settled over me like a blanket I hadn't known I needed. The confrontation at home escalated slowly. Mom started leaving Bible verses on my pillow. Passages about Sodom, about leaving your father and mother, about the narrow gate. I left Yaretzi's letters on the kitchen table one morning. The ones where Mom had poured out her young heart. When I came home from work, she was sitting at the table with them spread out, eyes red. "I thought I burned these," she whispered. "Why would you bring this pain back into our house?" I sat across from her and tried to keep my voice calm. "Because it wasn't just your pain. It was hers too. And now it's mine. I'm tired of pretending the rules are simple when real people are breaking under them." We talked for hours. Mom insisted the church had saved her from a life of isolation and shame. I pointed out the isolation she lived in now. The way she flinched whenever anyone mentioned happiness outside of Scripture. Neither of us won. We both walked away carrying new bruises. Riley and I took a drive that weekend to the lake outside town. We sat on the dock with our feet in the water. And she told me about growing up with a mom who accepted her immediately and a dad who still struggled but tried. "It's not perfect," she said, "but it's honest." When she turned to me, the sunset turning her eyes gold, I leaned in and kissed her properly for the first time. Gentle, careful, full of every question I still carried. She kissed me back the same way. And for those few minutes the world narrowed to just us and the lapping water. No guilt. No thunder from heaven. Just two women choosing each other in the quiet. The blow-up came on a Sunday after church. Mom had invited the pastor and his wife for lunch, probably hoping their presence would remind me of my place. I arrived late, still smelling of paint from Yaretzi's trim work. And the conversation turned to the gay agenda ruining families, before the salad even hit the table. I couldn't stay silent. What if the agenda is just people trying to live without hurting each other? The room went still. Pastor Michaels cleared his throat and quoted Leviticus. Mom's face went white. I stood up and told them everything. The photo, the letters, the way Mom's own past proved that forcing love into a box only made it bleed. Mom started crying, not angry tears but the kind that come from years of holding something broken. "I gave up everything so you wouldn't have to carry the same shame," she said. "And now you're throwing it in my face." The pastor tried to mediate, but his words felt hollow against the real pain in the room. Yaretzi wasn't there, yet her presence filled every silence. Mom finally looked at me and said the words that cut deepest. "If you choose this path, I can't watch you walk it. I love you too much to pretend it's okay." She didn't kick me out, but the message was clear. The door to the life I had always known was closing. I drove to Yaretzi's in a daze. She made tea and listened while I poured out the fight. "Your mother believes she's protecting you," she said gently. "I believed the same thing once when I tried to pray myself straight. Took me years to realize God's love isn't a cage." We sat on the porch until the sun went down. And for the first time I cried the kind of tears that clean instead of drown. Riley came over later. We didn't talk much. She just held me on the swing while the crickets sang. Her arm around my shoulders steady and warm. "Whatever you decide," she whispered. "You don't have to decide alone." That night I lay awake weighing everything. The comfort of the church pews I had grown up in. The scripture that had guided every major decision. Against the quiet joy I felt when Riley laughed at my terrible jokes, or when Yaretzi called me honey, like I was family she had waited decades to claim. No choice felt completely right. Every path carried loss. 3 weeks later the house repairs were finished. Yaretzi's roof no longer leaked, the porch steps were solid, and the shutters gleamed fresh white in the sunlight. She baked me a pie as thanks and we ate it on the porch while Riley sat on my other side. Our fingers loosely linked. Yaretzi looked at us with the same soft smile she had worn the day I first found the box. "You two remind me of what could have been," she said. "Not because you're perfect, nobody is, but because you're choosing each other without letting fear write the ending." I asked her if she regretted anything. She thought for a long moment. "I regret the years I spent believing I was broken. But I don't regret loving your mother. Love is never the mistake. The mistake is thinking you have to earn it by becoming someone else." Mom and I had reached a fragile truce. She still went to church every Sunday and I still helped Yaretzi with small fixes, but we didn't talk about Riley. Some evenings Mom left plates of food on my porch with a note that simply said love you. Other evenings the plate stayed empty. The loss ached, but it no longer felt like punishment. It felt like the price of telling the truth. I had started attending a small support group Riley introduced me to. People of faith who loved God and loved differently. And for the first time scripture felt like a conversation instead of a verdict. One crisp autumn afternoon, Yaretzi asked me to drive her to the old church camp where she and Mom had met. We stood at the edge of the lake where they had once shared secrets under the stars. She placed a small bouquet of roses at the water's edge. White for the purity they had both been taught to chase, red for the love they had been forced to bury. "I forgive her," she said quietly. "And I hope someday she forgives herself." On the drive home I realized I had done the same. I couldn't change Mom's choices. I could only own mine. Riley and I sat on my porch that night watching the same stars Yaretzi had once wished on. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I felt the steady rhythm of her breathing against my arm. The future wasn't mapped out in scripture or tradition anymore. It was ours to write, messy and honest and full of the kind of love that doesn't ask permission. I had lost pieces of the family I grew up with, but I had gained something truer. The courage to live inside my own skin. True or false? Choosing your authentic self always justifies the pain it causes the people you love?